Hello class. Today we're going to talk about the nervous system, the third part of lesson 2 of chapter 7. As I explain, I want you to focus and write down notes. But first, can you think how your body interprets, understands, or translates the information I'm giving to you? Okay, let's think about it for a second. How does your body interpret it? How does it translate? Technically, the information you hear and watch reaches your brain, and the brain sends an order to your hand to write it down. Starting with the nervous system, first of all, we're going to go to actually look at the definition of a nervous system. A nervous system, first of all, just like all systems, it's a group of organs. And as we recall levels of organization, it's cell, tissue, organ system, organism. So these groups of organs are mainly made up of cells. The cells that are in a nervous system are called neurons. Neurons are technically nerve cells. Okay. So technically the nervous system is a group of organs and specialized cells that do three things: detect, process, and respond to information. All these three happen in less than 1 second. Can you think of things that you actually do without thinking about it? Remember when we talked in the muscular system, when we were talking about voluntary and involuntary actions? The nervous system also has voluntary and involuntary control. Let's think of the digestion process or the breathing process. They're involuntary. You don't actually need to think about them when doing them. It just happens automatically. Okay, let's think of the actual detect process and respond part of the nervous system. As you see a sandwich, you start receiving information. So the first step, detect information. The next step is when the brain elaborates a response to eat it. So you process the information and eat. And finally, it produces an effect, the response, which is actually digestion. Just like breathing, it's an unintentional process, automatic, involuntary. So technically there are voluntary and involuntary movements. Let's go first to the parts of a nervous system. There are technically two main parts. First of all is the central nervous system, and the second part is the peripheral nervous system. For short, we're going to go with CNS and PNS. So central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. There are three main organs in the nervous system. First of all, brain, the main part, which receives the information and processes it, and the spinal cord. These two are part of the central nervous system, and nerves that are all over the body, nerve cells, neurons technically, are what make up the peripheral nervous system. You're going to watch in your slides this picture of a body where we have the brain and the spinal cord, which are part of the central nervous system, and the nerves that are all over the body. Going on to voluntary and involuntary control. Voluntary control, most important thing, it's non-automatic. Non-automatic how? You actually need to think about it to do it. Eating, walking, talking, reading, all these are voluntary control. You think about them in order to do them. They're not things that are done unintentionally. For example, reading, talking, walking, and a lot more. Going on to involuntary control. Involuntary control is things that are automatic. You cannot control them I can't tell my beating heart to stop or my breathing to stop. You stop it for a limited time, your breathing, but you cannot constantly control it in an on and off process like voluntary control. They're technically automatic. You cannot think about them. Breathing, digestion, pumping heart, all these are involuntary. Digestion, okay, we control what we want to eat, but when it actually enters our system and goes into our digestive system, it is uncontrolled, involuntary, automatic. One thing in involuntary control is a reflex. Reflex is one very important thing in involuntary control, as it's an automatic movement in response to a signal. How? For example, you touch a hot pan. You don't actually touch it and wait for it to feel hot and move it. It's actually hot. So your reflex action is technically removing your hand as fast as possible. Or when you're drinking a very hot cup of tea, it technically burns your tongue and you let it down. You don't continue swallowing, drinking. So reflex, automatic movement to a response, in response to a signal. So it is a respond to whatever happens. Okay, going on to the senses. We all know our 5 senses: vision, hearing, olfactory, taste, and touch. Olfactory is the smell. Humans detect their external conditions, their external environment using the 5 senses. We already said the nervous system is to make responses, reactions to the internal and external environment. Internal environment can be all our body systems. External conditions, external environment, our 5 senses. They are what control it. Information is first sent to the spinal cord and then goes to the brain, where the spinal cord takes the information and the brain processes and responds. Each response depends on a signal. Not all responses have the same signal, and not all signals give the same response. For example, vision, light signals. They receive light signals. Hearing, receive sound signals. So it all depends on the signal. Olfactory, smell, odor signals. So each sense has a different type of signal. Taste, chemical signals. Touch, on the other hand, has many receptors, many sensory receptors, as in some receive temperature signals, for example. So let's say many receptors, many signal receptors, as our body contains a long part of the skin and everything is touchable. So let's go with temperature signals, for example. So to sum up, the 5 senses interact with the external environment to receive information, process it, and respond to it. Based on the signal given, we get a response. Okay. Going on to the functions of a nervous system, there are technically 2 main functions. First of all, the nervous system receives the information. Input, technically. It gets the information. And the second step, it processes it. Process information. And finally, we have to respond. As we receive and process, we need a response. So the nervous system has technically 3 main functions: receive the input, process it, and respond to it. Let's look into details in the process of processing information. Processing information is a 3-step process. First of all, the first step, input. Information enters the nervous system. How does information enter the nervous system? With the use of peripheral nervous system. Because we said in the peripheral nervous system, we have neurons, the nerve cells, which is where the information enters. Second step, process. In order to process the information, most of the information is sent. So the information is sent to the central nervous system. What happens in the central nervous system? It processes information, first of all, and then sends signals. Sends signals to the peripheral nervous system. So sends signals to P and S. And the final step is a response. How can we respond to this information? The peripheral system responds. Peripheral nervous system sends a response. Okay, so going on into processing information. 3 main steps: input the information. As the information